With Secret Outlast, you can go for a jog and smell like you didn't. With Secret Outlast, you can go for a jog in the middle of August and smell like you didn't. With Secret Outlast, you can go for a jog in the middle of August and accidentally finish first in a fun run.
We have a new winner!
And smell like you didn't. With Secret Outlast, you can do anything life throws your way and smell like you didn't. Secret provides 72-hour odor protection. Available in sticks or sprays. Secret works.
Local news, national news, even feel-good news. Delivering the topics that are relevant to you.
That's why I listen to Joe. He covers it all.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
No, listen, we are going to talk about what happened in the courtroom in New York City today with Donald Trump. We are going to talk about that. We're going to hear from Donald Trump. We're going to hear from you with your reaction on Donald Trump being stuck in court when he could be out campaigning. We're going to hear from Blacks for Trump. That's an organization, Blacks for Trump. We're going to hear from Hillary Clinton, who says that Donald Trump wants to kill his opposition in a wild rant. But first, I have to share with you something shocking that happened to me yesterday.
You seem a little shaken up.
I was at church yesterday, and in the middle of what I thought was Pastor Renault's, might have been his best sermon ever. And hang on, before you think, oh, here goes Joe talking about his faith again. This story has absolutely nothing to do with my faith. Nothing. Brilliant sermon from Pastor Renault. And I was at the edge of my seat. I mean, it truly was a very, very compelling sermon. And then suddenly, from behind me, I hear a sound.
Oh, no.
Someone behind me starts eating an apple in the middle of service. And you know what? I just about went Appleplectic.
Like you're doing now?
Do you know how rude it is to eat an apple in the middle of service? Am I wrong on this? Am I wrong? Now, Laurel,
there are lower volume fruits like a banana or a grape that you could possibly, if you had to have something, yes.
Laurel, you know that I have that thing.
Yes, you do have that thing.
Misophonia.
You do.
Which is, what is that? It's I hate hearing the sound of people eat.
Right, exactly.
And honestly, I've been a bit more chill about it in recent years. I don't know why, but I'm starting to deal better with misophonia. But my microphone has apple juice now all over it. I kept looking back to give that death stare. And then I'm like, I'm in church. I should not be turning back and giving death stares to someone behind me in church. But, you know, we hand out donuts and bagels, and they're all, as you say, Paul, those are quiet foods, right? We don't hand out apples. So someone brought their own apple to church. So my question for you is, do you share with me that person is literally the worst human being on the face of the planet? Yes or no? 844-580-WDBO or use the open mic in the WDBO app. Now I have a partially eaten apple that I want to finish before it goes bad. So we're going to take about a 20-minute commercial break so I can...
I was just going to say, you want to go to traffic take a couple more bites?
Wash that down with some coffee. That's good. That's a really delicious apple for what it's worth. I don't know what kind of apple that is, but it's really, really good.
Now, you see, Laurel talks about hating ASMR and all of the paper rattling and things that you do.
Yeah.
The food eating thing is what gets me. I do not like the sound of...
That's how I am.
But if you're eating food behind me, that's fine. But in my headphones from a microphone...
Just moments ago. See,
Everybody has their own thing. Somebody in the chat room, Joe, hates it when you whistle.
Yeah, I know that. They always tell me that when I whistle. But I'll be at the breakfast table with my sons, and we're all eating crunchy cereal, and I'll hear them eating crunchy cereal, and it will drive me crazy. I will have to get up and leave the room, and they're like, Dad, you're making crunchy sounds too. And I'm like, I know it doesn't bother me when I'm crunching. It bothers me when you're crunching. And because I recognize that it's my problem, not theirs, I can't say to them, stop eating crunchy foods, but I can say, excuse me, please, I'm going to go eat in the bathroom or I'm going to go somewhere else.
Now, which do you find worse, the crunching of potato chips or the crinkling of the bag while someone's trying to get potato chips?
Crinkling of the bag doesn't bother me. Not at all. It is literally just the sound of chewing food, and I just come unglued. And as I said, I'm better about it than I was. Because I used to I would storm out of a room, again, angry at myself, not angry at people for eating crunchy food, but angry at myself. I would storm out of a room. But now I'm, and someone in the chat room says maybe because you're losing your hearing. Maybe I am. Maybe as I'm getting older, I just can't hear the crunching quite as loud as it once was.
Or it's selective hearing. You hear things that drive you crazy, and the other stuff is just white noise.
I can't wait to hear what Connie has to say in Orlando at 844-580-WDBO. Hi, Connie.
Hi, Joe. First of all, you made me spit out my coffee. I was laughing so hard because the conversation is really appealing to me, and I want to get to the core of the situation. How rude! Oh my God! It's like eating corn chips in church. You just don't do that.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Rude.
You know, there's actually, and there are discussions in church groups as to whether or not it's appropriate for churches to hand out coffee and donuts. Before service, to take it into the sanctuary to eat and drink during a sermon, and our church, I mean, it has plenty of donuts and bagels, and we even have we have the squeezable yogurts, the Go-Gurts, and we have the squeezable applesauce, but we don't have apples. Someone brought their own apple.
Switch it to bananas.
Yes, at least a banana would be quiet.
On a more serious note, and I know you haven't talked about it yet, but your screener said it was okay for me to bring up Trump. Mm-hmm. I have a huge concern, and it's coming together like a puzzle to me, so I want your take on it.
Okay.
They're trying to take away his security clearance or his security detail if he should get convicted or whatever and goes to jail. I'm afraid they're doing all this to get him in jail, to Epstein him. That's a real concern of mine.
I don't think, Connie, even if he goes to jail, I think he will still have his Secret Service protection. He will not be jailed the way other people are jailed.
Okay. Well, they're putting in for it. I don't know who it was, if he was a member of the Senate or the House, but he put in to take away his security details should he be convicted. And that really put a big light bulb on the top of my head. And I'm thinking, okay, they know they can't beat him. They're doing everything they possibly can to stop him, and that's like the last resort.
I think American history would look very, very badly on anybody who takes away a president's security detail and then sends him off to prison. I think that's.
Do you think they care, Joe? Do you think they care how they look?
I don't know that. I don't know that some members do. I mean, some members of the left don't care at all. And would rather him be dead. But I don't think that there's enough people who would get behind something like that. And I can't see that happening, Connie. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you calling. And let's go to, is it Therese in Orlando? Therese, I'm so sorry. Hi, Therese. How are you?
Hi, Joe. It's Therese. And interestingly enough, the noise about people getting upset about people chewing potato chips and popping their gum and stuff like that, it's actually it's a condition, and it's called misophonia.
Well, I know.
And it is, it's unfortunately, though, it's not something that can get diagnosed. Not a lot of doctors know about it.
Yeah.
But I think it affects a lot more people out there than anybody realizes.
I know.
My daughters have been dealing with it through school for the last 5 years.
How do they handle it? Do they walk out?
A lot of times it's walking out. They'll listen to music on their headphones.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a flight or a fight risk. They go off and like try to get away from people, and I mean it can hurt because when you try and go out to a restaurant, they get really triggered out there, and they just shut down.
Wow,
and
they both have
a
it.
panic attack.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
That's terrible. I mean, so at the house, do you serve just soft foods, quiet foods?
No, but we do have like plastic plates, and there are certain forks that we could use because if you use like the big dinner forks, the tone of those can trigger them as well.
Wow, I'm so sorry to hear that. I fully can empathize with the misery of misophonia.
Yeah, so
I wish there was a pill or something.
Yes, and there's not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
A lot of therapy and just coming up with coping mechanisms.
I'm so glad you called, Therese. Thank you for. Oops, I just spit a piece of apple on the control board here. The engineers are not going to be happy with me, Therese. I promise you that. Eating in the studio. Thank you so much for listening. Drive safely. Let's go to, is it Benet in Oviedo? Hi, Benet.
Hi, how are you?
Excellent.
Me too. Okay, just wanted to say I'm sorry for the person that was chewing and bothered you in church, but they could have had a medical condition where they had to have something to eat, possibly diabetes.
So I did think about that. That did cross my mind that, maybe this person was having a sugar issue and needed an apple or something.
They could have chosen something different, granted that, but they also didn't want to miss the sermon, and you are not to judge.
Oh, see, that's you're right, Benet. You're right. That's why I said when I turn around to glance and give that evil stare, I'm like, what am I doing? I can't do that in church. I can't do that anywhere.
Yep.
We can agree that maybe it was bad manners, but yeah, who am I to judge, right?
Yes.
You're right. Benet, thank you so much.
Anyway, I'm sorry for them bothering you.
I appreciate your sympathy.
It wasn't me.
I appreciate that as well. Thank you so much. I'll have to go back and watch the sermon on video because we record every sermon. I'm just curious if the sound of the apple got picked up in the microphones because it was so loud. And then I have one of those moments. I was actually sitting by myself in church for the service, but my wife wasn't able to join me yesterday for service. So I was literally sitting by myself. And you know that moment where you look around and like, am I the only one hearing this? Is there anyone else that is hearing this? Someone's eating an apple in the middle of the sermon. And I'm looking around, I'm like, nope, it's just me. I'm the only one who is hearing the sound. And so I, for a moment, was like, I'm going to get up and walk out. But the sermon was so good, I didn't want to get up and walk out, nor did I want to be seen getting up and walking out of the sermon. So
can you imagine if the pastor stuffed his mouth full of food and then started to talk?
He might as well have. That's the same effect.
Well,
I don't know why someone would be so
It's
rude.
like those people that heat up salmon in the microwave at work.
They're the worst. They're the absolute worst people ever.
I need to turn on some music on my headphones. My goodness.
This is terrible. Man, that is a really, really good apple, though. I tell you. Oh, there's an engineer. I don't want him to see me eating.
He just walked by. I saw him, too.
I know. Okay, so coming up next, all the stories that you missed while you were at work today. Stay with us. It's next on The Joe Kelley Show.
We all have that friend who wakes up early to go get everyone McDonald's breakfast, while the rest of us sleep in. This is your sign to thank them. And if you're that friend, this is us saying thank you.
Just a friendly reminder that right now, get any size iced coffee before 11 a.m. for just 99 cents. And a satisfying sausage McMuffin with egg is just $2.79. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Now, the three big things you need to know. Powered by Hard Rock Bet.
3. Tesla's dropping prices. The electric vehicle manufacturer has faced declining sales recently, reducing prices of the Model X, Model Y, and Model S by $2,000.
2.
One crew member is dead and over a dozen are missing after 2 Japanese Navy helicopters crashed into the sea over the southern coast of Japan Saturday night. Japan's Minister of Defense said it's likely the 2 helicopters collided into each other during an anti-submarine training exercise. Popular clothing retailer Express Inc. has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and plans to close 100 stores across the U.S.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. Cash in on our 100th anniversary with the WDBO payroll payout. Your next chance at $1,000 happens tomorrow at 8 a.m. Listen for the keyword and then tap the payroll payout button in the WDBO app. It's our way of saying thank you for 100 incredible years.
I do think that it is quite rude to be eating an apple in church like that. I know you can eat quieter things, but I don't see why anybody should be eating in church anyway, unless they're diabetic and need something.
From your office to ours, we're breaking down today's big stories. Here's what you missed while you were at work.
Opening statements begin in the first criminal trial of the presumptive Republican nominee for president. That trial has since wrapped up for the day today. The Supreme Court said that it would take up the issue of ghost guns in the next term and the Biden administration's appeal seeking to regulate the self-assembled weapon kits. National Enquirer, check that, ex-National Enquirer publisher David Pecker takes the stand as the first witness. I mean this is a genuine question. Does anybody know, is the National Enquirer still a thing? Does that still exist? When you go check out at your neighborhood Publix, is there still a National Enquirer magazine? I have no idea if that's still a thing. If someone knows, let me know. The Supreme Court also appeared ready to let cities crack down on homeless camps, which conservative justice is questioning lower court rulings against anti-camping laws. Coincidentally, the state of Florida just implemented an anti-camping in public on public grounds law. So we have that as a law now. 844-580-WDBO. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. We are talking about just this horrific experience I had on Sunday in church as some dude starts eating an apple in the middle of the sermon.
Joe, I am right there with you. I won't say he's the worst human on the planet, but let me tell you, smacking gum, popcorn at the movies, or as you experienced, eating an apple. Do those in the bathroom or do it before you come in.
And eating in the bathroom. That just sounds so gross anyway.
Joe, I think you're kind of overreacting there.
What?
There could be a worse sound like the cock of a gun, or somebody shooting a gun. That would be a lot worse to hear behind you.
Well, that escalated quickly now, didn't it?
Well, this is a day for the history books. I think this is the first time, Joe, you have eaten while doing the radio show. I think you eat normally, a couple hours before?
Yeah, I've got a 1 hour rule that I don't eat anything for 1 hour before I go on the radio, just lest it not sit well in my stomach. And so I make sure that I don't eat before I go on the radio because I don't want to have any kind of problems while I'm on the radio. You know what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying? You know where I'm coming from? Also, something else that happened to me over the weekend. Remember when I went fishing last week and I caught a couple of bass, like in rapid succession? When I got off the air, I stopped at this little pond in Ocoee, and I caught all these fish, and I was so excited. It's like, okay, now I'm going to take my son out fishing, any one of my sons. I'm going to take them fishing because I now know exactly what pond to take them to and exactly what crankbait to use and everything. And so Brooks went with me we went Saturday evening near dusk Saturday, and we hit 2 different ponds in Ocoee and didn't catch a single thing. I gave him my exact pole with the exact same crankbait that I had caught the fish 2 days prior, and we caught nothing. And as we were putting the fishing poles in the trunk of my car, Laurel pulls an Ocoee police officer, and he rolls down his window, and I'm like, oh, here we go. I'm going to get busted for fishing in the pond, or he's going to check me for my license or whatever. But the guy rolls down his window and points at me and goes, Joe Kelley, I knew that was you. I knew you caught that fish in this pond. And so Officer Rodriguez, what a cool dude, man. It was really nice to meet him because that pond was right next to the Ocoee Police Department. And it was a lot of fun. It made my day.
I'm going to name drop you next time I run into a cop.
Yeah, Officer Rodriguez, really cool dude.
Okay, good.
All right, it's the Joe Kelley Show. Coming up next, Tijuana Flats. Tijuana Flats. They got problems. Details next.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. In-depth segments on topics that matter to Orange, Seminole, Osceola, and all of Central Florida. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
I love your show every night. You're doing great, bud.
So one of the stories that you likely missed today while you're at work is that the Florida-based Tijuana Flats files for bankruptcy. They close at least 11 restaurants. Underperforming restaurants. There's a restaurant walking distance from my house. I have to see as I drive home tonight if they're still open or if they have been closed. They don't seem to be very busy very often, so I would not be surprised if they had closed that one. Jake is in Orlando at 844-580-WDBO. And Jake, you know something about Tijuana Flats, I'm told?
Yeah, I heard the original founder opened up another restaurant in Castleberry called Big Taco now.
Big Taco?
Correct.
In Castleberry?
Correct. It's owned by the guy who started Tijuana Flats.
Right, because now Tijuana Flats, they have sold to another company. Their new ownership group is called Flatheads. I don't know what else Flatheads owns, but that's the new ownership group of Tijuana Flats. And it makes sense that the previous owner then would start a new taco joint. And heaven knows, there's a lot of taco joints in Orlando, particularly when you get to downtown Orlando. I mean, there's taco joints on every corner.
Definitely, there's a lot of them around town.
Jake, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And I remember when I first moved to Orlando, like in 2011, Tijuana Flats was so popular, and everybody loved Tijuana Flats. And there's that Tijuana Flats in College Park, and like our company, we would be there for lunch twice a week. I cannot remember the last time we went to Tijuana Flats as a company. I can't remember the last time I went to Tijuana Flats as an individual. I mean, I don't know. When it's kind of funny. One of my sons texted me and said, "Hey, Dad, can we go get tacos?" And I said, "Yeah, do you want to go to Tijuana Flats? Because it's right by where we live." And he said, "No, can you make tacos?" And I'm like, "Oh, he wants me to make tacos. That's cool." So I made homemade tacos Saturday, which one's homemade tacos are always the best tacos in the world, period. But, I got to tell you, every time I've been to Tijuana Flats in the last few years, I have been really, really underwhelmed. And I don't want to say I hate them. I don't like them. But, man, it's just not what I think of when I'm like, I got to have a really good taco. Like, what places do you guys think of when you think, I've got to have a really good taco?
If I'm going out for tacos in Orlando, I end up at Gringo's.
I like Gringos Locos a lot. I like San Jose's. They've got a couple locations.
I like San Jose's also. I like San Jose's fajitas. And they do have a couple of locations, like 3 or 4 actually. And their fajitas are like on my top 2 list of fajitas. My number 1 fajita location is Uncle Julio's down on I Drive. I love Uncle Julio's. Paul, do you have a taco favorite?
Taco Bell.
Yeah, honestly, I like Taco Bell.
I mean, if honestly, I used to go to this place in San Diego that I swear had the best tacos. I could eat 100 of them, and then they closed down, and I couldn't find anything like it out here on the East Coast. So just like some people will go, hey, yeah, my comfort food, my best burger is McDonald's.
Yeah,
I think Taco Bell just kind of hits me, and
yeah, man, I love a good Taco Supreme. Absolutely so. All right, 844-580-WDBO. You can use the open mic and the WDBO app. Hang on, let me see which story I want to go to next. All right, we're going to do a hard pivot here. You guys ready for a hard pivot? Let's get to some serious news. So this happened in Florida. 2 Florida teenagers are dead in what the police are calling a murder-suicide at a drug-fueled house party. It happened in a home near St. Petersburg, where a 17-year-old was dog-sitting, according to the sheriff's office. and then throwing a party at which one of the attendees, a 14-year-old, and I don't know if this is a boy or a girl. I can't tell by the name. Sayuri, Sayuri, Sayuri Jade. Is that a boy or a girl? I know it doesn't matter in the grand scale of things, but I'm just curious. So Pfeiffer, the guy who was dog sitting, begins brandishing a firearm that belonged to the homeowner that he was dog sitting for. Detectives learned they all began playing with the firearm and taking photos with it. A verbal altercation ensued. That's such cop talk. So they got in a fight, and then Pfeiffer became upset. He approached Ruiz, the Sayura Jade Ruiz, pointed the gun, at her head. Good, I got a pronoun. Her head, and shot her. Detectives say Pfeiffer then shot himself in the head. Both were dead by the time the deputies arrived. So the question becomes, should the homeowner be charged for leaving his guns in an accessible location inside the home? Well, what was the family up in Michigan? The mom and dad that just got sent to jail for 15 years? What was their name?
Crumbly?
That's right, Ethan Crumbly's parents. Now, of course, in that particular scenario, they literally bought him the gun. This one's slightly different, and we'll still have to flesh out some of the details here, but why wouldn't the homeowner be charged? If you're leaving your handgun out, accessible, and you know that teenagers are coming over, and then they're drinking, I wonder if the alcohol was also in the house. Because the teenagers, theoretically shouldn't be able to go out and buy alcohol, even though that they do. Teenagers, since the beginning of time, have had ways to obtain alcohol. But do you think that the homeowner should be charged for leaving his gun in an accessible place while he's got teenagers at his house dog-sitting his dog? 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. Also, coming up, we went to the moon in the 1960s. Why is it so hard to get back to the moon now? What the heck? We did it with 60s technology. And how is it we can't get back to the moon now? Why am I going to talking in this whining voice? I don't know. I'm going to answer some of these questions coming up on The Joe Kelley Show.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. News, weather, traffic, all the things you want on your drive home. Plus, Joe Kelley being, Joe Kelley. Now, The Joe Kelley Show on Orlando's News and Talk, WDBO.
All right, big old party in St. Petersburg, and the kids that are there dog watching, dog sitting, find a gun and alcohol and use both. Two teenagers are dead.
Joe, you've talked about being a responsible gun owner quite often and about the Second Amendment. And I think, as for myself, as a responsible gun owner, if I were to be stupid enough to keep a weapon out where a person would be able to find it and use it, I should also be found guilty of some type of negligence.
Yeah, we had another open mic that the quality of it was bad, and so I'm not going to be able to air it, but she was, giving excuses as if, they probably put the alcohol away and put the guns away, and the teenagers were just being nosy and going through his stuff. It's not enough to put a gun away. Putting a gun in a sock drawer is not enough. If you're going to have teenagers over, you need to lock it up. I hate to sound like that public service announcement, but you need to lock the gun up or take it with you. Don't leave a loaded gun, in the house with unattended teenagers, particularly if, and we don't know, again, the source of the alcohol, but particularly if there is alcohol available to the kids. Putting it up is just not sufficient. We're also talking about tacos and our inability to listen to people eat them.
Hey, Joe, the best tacos in the area are at Taco China on North Mills in the Milk District. Taco China is an Asian Mexican fusion restaurant. It's more like a taco truck with a brick and mortar location. Fantastic tacos.
It's funny when you said that. Both Greg and Laurel did I agree with that.
That's a great late night taco place. But it has to be late night. I don't like them during the day. I like them after a long night.
Do you know that we have a Taco Chino's right across the street from us? At the Cadillac dealership right across the street, there's a little food court in there. And I don't know if it's still there. It's probably been 5 or 6 years since I went there. But there is or was a Taco Chino's right across the street.
There is a food court in a Cadillac dealership. I'm trying to wrap my head around this.
Yes, that's right. So while you're having your car serviced, you could sit and have a Taco Chino taco. I honestly... when I pull out tonight, I'll have to look and see if the sign is still up, because it was their sign was integrated with the Cadillac dealership sign. It was the same sign. So
ever since I had to do a little work at a Tijuana Flats and I was back in the kitchen, it just doesn't smell right in there for me, man. I wouldn't eat there if you paid me.
But isn't that the case for all food workers? Laurel, you were a server at Olive Garden. Don't you hate Olive Garden?
Yeah. When I worked at Red Robin, I couldn't eat at Red Robin for a decade. After I worked at Olive Garden, I swore that off for a decade. Yeah, it takes a long time to come back around.
I would think so, too. You know, there was that thing that people used to say about McDonald's. Like, man, everybody's first job is at McDonald's, and when they all get old enough, no one's going to ever want to eat at McDonald's. So McDonald's is going to go out of business because everybody once worked at McDonald's. I've never worked at McDonald's. I have never worked in food service. For that matter, I was like the one guy, and I've never worked in retail. I've never worked in retail or food service. How about that?
Hi, Joe. This is Vicky. I'm a person like you. I cannot stand to hear people chewing. I don't even go to movies because of the sound of people slurping their drinks and crunching their popcorn.
Wow. I had to have been about 16 years old or so, and a buddy of mine had a job at a movie theater. And he took me up to the projection room and opened the window where you can, see the audience down below watching a movie. He goes, he says, I want to show you something. I was like, all right. So we went up to the projection room. He opened up the window and he said, stick your head kind of out the window. And I did. And he goes, do you hear that? And I'm like, yeah, what is that? He goes, that's people eating popcorn. And it was so loud. When you're above it from the projection room, I'm still annoyed from that instance from when I was like 15, 16 years old of hearing people chewing popcorn en masse in a movie theater, that I could hear it over the projection of the movie and everything else.
They see that was what ASMR was invented for. That's what you want to hear. You just want to stick your head outside the window of a projectionist office. Now you know what it sounds like.
No, that is not. By the way, speaking about films, is anybody watching Fallout on Amazon?
I finished it last night.
Are you kidding? You finished it last week? You didn't even start it yet.
Nah, we finished it.
And?
It's amazing. It's fantastic. And I've only watched people play the video game. I never played it myself. Doesn't matter. Show's still amazing.
I'll take that recommendation then.
So I am, how many, are there 8 episodes?
Yes.
I'm on episode 6.
Oh, you're almost there.
I'm taking it slowly. And if you're into violence, this is it. If you're not into violence, you might want to avoid it. It's got bloody violence, which is a bit over the top, but I think that's kind of the point of the series, is over the top violence, video game style violence. I don't recall any sex scenes.
There's one in the beginning, and then in episode 6, there's some nudity, and they are kind of graphic explaining some sexual things. That's the episode my husband and I looked at each other and we're like, we're not letting the 15-year-old watch this. She really wanted to, and we're like, really skipping this episode.
And then I don't recall off the top of my head cussing.
Yes, they say the F word.
They do, okay.
Yes.
Well, so does Taylor Swift, so I guess that's the in thing these days. All right, coming up next, why is it so hard to send humans back to the moon? Have you asked yourself that question? I know that I have. Like, what are we doing? Why is it we were there in 1969, it's now 2024, and we can't get humans back on the moon? I'm going to break it down, unpack it for you, why it's so much harder now than it was back in the 1960s. That's coming up next.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Now, from the Bogan Munz & Munz WDBO Traffic Center. Auto accident? Choose Bogan Munz & Munz.
We had that crash on I-4 eastbound at 436, and they have the right exit lane closed there. Now they've opened up that left exit lane. The medical crews have left. Now they just have a wrecked car there against the side, and they're waiting for a tow vehicle to come get that out of the way. But the right lane is still closed. Then we go to the Turnpike, and the Turnpike, this is northbound after I-4. You've got a multi-vehicle crash with a box truck involved. It's still on the right shoulder there, and the left shoulder is also occupied by police and another vehicle, but they just have one of those huge tow vehicles now hooking up the box truck. So this will be taken away soon, but it's still causing some delays through there. ProTech Air Conditioning and Plumbing Service for honesty, integrity, and 100% customer satisfaction. Call ProTech, 407-502-6263, or visit ProTechAC.com. From the WDBO Traffic Center, I'm Paul Cross.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. From the jazz age to the information age, WDBO has been there. Join us in saluting a century of broadcasting excellence. Happy 100th WDBO, the soundtrack to Orlando's history.
All right, Donald Trump started his day in court, and before he walked into the courtroom, he made a 42-second remark.
Thank you very much. I just want to say before we begin, these are all Biden trials. This is done as election interference. Everybody knows it. I'm here instead of being able to be in Pennsylvania and Georgia and lots of other places campaigning. And it's very unfair. Fortunately, the poll numbers are very good. They've been going up because people understand what's going on. This is a witch hunt, and it's a shame. And it comes out of Washington. It's in coordination with Washington, everything, including the DA's office. It's in coordination with Washington. I just want people to understand that this is done for purposes of hurting the opponent of the worst president in the history of our country.
And a lot of reaction in the WDBO open mic already.
I want to know why Trump's going through this. I mean, it's the ex-president of the United States. He did a great job. He's for the people, and the guy didn't make a penny doing it. What is going on? Why is this being allowed?
A lot of different observations.
So the judge stops the trial for the Passover holiday, but yet Trump can't go to his son's graduation.
Yeah, it is a strange, strange world.
Hey, Joe, I thought the whole point of hush money was to make someone go away quietly. Apparently, Stormy Daniels didn't get the memo. Can Trump get a refund?
That's a good question. And there's a group called Blacks for Trump. They were formed in 2020, and their website is blacksfortrumps2020.com. I tried to pull up that website on our computers today, and it was blocked by our IT department as a hate group, which in and of itself I thought was interesting. So I wasn't able to download the entire song, but I was able to download 25 seconds of a song produced by Blacks for Trump.
Black MAGA, Black MAGA, Black MAGA, Black MAGA, Black MAGA, Black MAGA, Black MAGA. Donald Trump, yeah, that's my president. Donald Trump, the first black president. Ever seen a black patriot? Yeah, we exist. The Democrats use my color just to stay rich. Indict my president, you might as well indict me too. Call me your Uncle Tom, but really what Obama do? Not a damn thing, Trump was just that Chick-fil-A.
I like that. I really like that. Now, Hillary Clinton. Oh, she's desperate. She is just willing to say anything imaginable, anything at all to tarnish Donald Trump's image.
Putin does what he would like to do: kill his opposition, imprison his opposition, drive, journalists and others into exile, rule without any check or balance. That's what Trump really wants. And so we have to be very conscious of how he sees the world, because in that world, he only sees strongmen leaders. He sees Putin. He sees Xi. He sees Kim Jong-un in North Korea. Those are the people he is modeling himself after. And we've been down this road in our, world history. We sure don't want to go down that again. And especially when, my view, having negotiated with Putin and knowing that one of the reasons he went after me is because he knew I would deal with him in an appropriate way. And Trump would basically do whatever he wanted.
I mean, doesn't that just smack of desperation to imply that Donald Trump wants to kill his opposition? To kill his opposition. Whenever has Donald Trump indicated that he wanted to kill his opposition? It's unbelievable. And you notice no one challenges her, no one stops her and says, well, wait a minute, and Mrs. Clinton, Mrs. Secretary Clinton, whatever title we bestow upon her. It is outrageous. 844-580-WDBO. If you want to comment about that, you can use the open mic in the WDBO app. Let's talk about getting to the moon. So we're trying again to get to the moon. And I am a space geek. I love watching the launches. I love that we get to just step outdoors and see the launch. By the way, there was going to be a launch tonight, and it has been pushed back to tomorrow. And at this point, it looks like it was going to be tomorrow day. Now it looks like it's going to be tomorrow night. This thing they've rescheduled this a half dozen times in honestly the last 12 hours. They've rescheduled this. So I'm not entirely sure when it's going to launch. But it's another SpaceX Falcon 9 with Starlink Internet satellite. So I don't want to say hashtag yawn because I think every launch is interesting. This is just becoming so routine that it's almost just a pedestrian launch. It's just something you walk by and, oh, yeah, there's a launch. So, but I have long wondered why in the world, how, and let me just throw this out there first. Don't tell me that we didn't go to moon in 1969. That is not a serious part of this conversation. If you want to have a serious part of the conversation, then stop that. But how in the world did we get to the moon in 1969 with 1969 and 1960s technology? And now it's 2024 and we're having such difficulty getting to the moon and getting man back on the moon. So I read a piece today at Yahoo News, and I thought it did a pretty good job of explaining why it is that we're having such a hard time getting back to the moon. And now this is a very lengthy and complicated issue, and I'm going to break it down for you as simply as possible. Basically, it comes down to money, politics, and priorities. At its peak, during the Apollo program, NASA was consuming about 5% of the entire federal budget. And more than half of that was devoted to the Apollo program. By comparison, today, NASA commands less than 0.5% of the total federal government, and it has a much broader range of priorities and directives. See, at the peak of Apollo, accounting for inflation, the entire Apollo program today would cost about $260 billion. If you include the Gemini and robotic lunar program, which were necessary precursors to Apollo, that figure reaches $280 billion. Over the last decade, NASA has spent $90 billion on the Artemis program. So not even as much in today's dollars that we would have spent getting man to the moon. Naturally, with less money going to a new moon landing, we're going to make slower progress, even with advancements in technology. Closely tied to the financial realities are the political realities. In the 1960s, America was at war. We had a space race. We were in a Cold War, in a competition with the Soviet Union to achieve as many firsts in space, especially landing humans on the moon. And we were losing the space race. The public was on board and energized by the idea. Lawmakers directed NASA's expansive budget. We, the United States, had a common enemy, the Soviets. And we didn't want to lose to the Soviets. That kind of spending, though, was unsustainable. That's part of what killed the Soviet Union. Was them trying to spend, it was to see who would go broke first, which nation would go broke first, America or the Soviets. Fortunately, because of capitalism here and communism there, the United States won that war. And as soon as America won the space race, as soon as we had man step foot on the moon, funding for NASA tumbled. There wasn't the political or public will to spend that kind of money for a second shot at the moon. Now, fast forward to today, the Artemis program. I don't know that I'd thought about this. The Artemis concept has a much different set of priorities than the Apollo missions did. For example, our risk tolerance is much, much lower today than it was in the 1960s. The Apollo missions were outright dangerous, with a significant chance of failure. Several missions did encounter disasters. The Apollo 1 fire that killed 3 astronauts, an engine shutdown during Apollo 6, and the near-fatal design flaw that led to the deaths, or nearly led to the deaths of the Apollo 13 astronauts. NASA, lawmakers, and us, the public, were not willing to take on that level of risk again, especially after the Challenger and Columbia disasters. Now, this was the piece I didn't realize. The Apollo missions expended enormous sums of money to send astronauts to the lunar surface for a few dozen hours. They went, they collected some samples, set up some simple experiments, and left. The Artemis missions are designed around a completely different set of goals. For one, the astronauts will spend up to a week on the lunar surface, which requires much more food, water, fuel, and scientific instruments. Second, while the Apollo missions treated science as an afterthought, the main goal was just to beat the Soviets. Scientific investigation will take center stage in the Artemis program, which means it entails a longer, more complex mission design. Lastly, the intent of the Artemis program isn't just to return humans to the moon. It is to begin building the infrastructure to maintain a permanent human presence there. Everything from orbiting refueling depots to site selection for future colonies falls under the umbrella of the Artemis project. It is a much more involved program because it provides the framework for achieving dreams for generations to come, especially as we retire the International Space Station. We've already retired the shuttle program. We will, in a few years, deliberately push the International Space Station out of orbit and into the upper atmosphere, where most of it will burn up in outer space before what's left of it will crash into the Indian Ocean. There's a zone in the Indian Ocean that is absolutely massive, and that is the NASA graveyard. That's, space station graveyard. That's where we deliberately crash things. So once we deliberately deorbit the International Space Station, the Chinese have a space station. The Russians are talking about launching their own space station. We are in discussions with private organizations to launch another American space station, but it would be privately operated, not operated by NASA and the U.S. government. So effectively, the moon is going to become our next space station. And that is why Artemis is taking so long. Artemis is years behind schedule and billions of dollars over budget, which makes me wonder why we didn't contract out with Elon Musk or ULA or someone else to do it, who seems like they could do it much more efficiently and much quicker. So there you have it.
Now, I know that Laurel was listening to this story, and I know that when you said it, Laurel, you had to have had the same thoughts that I had, and that is to quote Star Wars, that's no moon. That's a space station.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what the moon would become, is a space station. And it would be the fueling point. So we would, send a rocket off from Earth, and it would stop at the moon. It would refuel. It would get supplies. And then from there, it would go off into deeper orbit on its way to Mars or beyond at some point.
They ought to just put a Buc-ee's up there.
Maybe someday there will be. So I'm curious of people's appetite. I mean, I think space exploration is one of the most important things that humanity, I don't just mean the United States, but humanity, we need to be exploring the galaxies. We need to be looking to see what's out there and looking beyond our own biosphere, our own planet, and looking further. I would make it a higher priority. I don't know that I would do it the same way that they're doing. Again, we all thought it was a terrible idea when the shuttle program shut down, and NASA said that they were going to privatize space flight. We're like, that's a dumb idea. Now we look back and realize, gosh, you know what? Whoever had that vision was pretty smart. That was a pretty good idea. So why didn't we do that with the Artemis program? Why didn't we privatize the Artemis program? So I don't necessarily think we're doing it the right way, but I think space exploration must remain a top priority of humanity.
I guess the look at it would be, do you want the next major space endeavor to be privatized? Do you want the moon to become an Amazon warehouse? Is that the step that we want to take when we as we continue to try and explore further out? Do we want that to be a privatized, Elon Musk takes care of that, or do we want that to be a global endeavor?
There are international laws on owning planets and stuff like that, and no nation can own or control another planet according to international laws today. But I think that private companies would be more driven, more inspired if they had mineral rights, if they were able to plow the moon, if you will, for mineral rights, and Mars for mineral rights. There is a series, and gosh, I watched it years ago, and I don't remember the name of it. I think it's called Mars, and it's it's a docudrama. It's part drama and part documentary. They interview Elon Musk and Neil deGrasse Tyson and a bunch of other people, and then there's a drama portion of it where they go to Mars, and you truly have competing private companies up there. At one point, there's a conflict between the two private companies that almost became a war of sorts. But it really seems like that's the model that's going to get it done, is if you are able to reward people so that they can make profits by going to the moon, by going to Mars. That enables the U.S. taxpayers to not be on the hook for quite so much if you allow private companies to risk their own capital rather than risking the capital of the United States taxpayers. And if and when there is a tragic loss of life, that becomes the burden of the private companies and not necessarily the burden of the United States. I'm open to other ideas, y'all. 844-580-WDBO. 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. Or do you think, potato, let's call the whole thing off? 844-580-WDBO. You're listening to the Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Connected to our community. Talk local issues and events with Joe Kelley. Use the open mic in the WDBO app and let Joe know what interests you. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
Well, I don't want to name names, but somebody went really long in that last segment, so we don't have a whole lot of time in this segment. So stay with us. We will continue this discussion. A lot of great comments in the open mics about space exploration. We'll get into that coming up next. Stay with us here on the Joe Kelley Show.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. For 100 years, we've been your voice, your source, your heartbeat. From the roaring 20s to the digital age, we've been there for it all. Happy 100th anniversary, WDBO, where history and headlines meet.
I guess nobody got the funding and nobody came up with the idea of how to get the International Space Station back to Earth in one piece, huh?
I don't want to be sarcastic about this because I take it that's a legitimate question, but to what end? Why would we need the International Space Station back in one piece? What would we do with it? It is becoming outdated. And like with the shuttle program, it is just simply going to be retired. And, we could land the shuttles. The International Space Station was never designed to land. One of the things I love about being the host of this show is that I often get to learn from you. And I am particularly fond of listeners who aren't turds about pointing out when I've said something that is either inaccurate, incorrect, or there's a part of the story that I didn't know. So I'm grateful for this open mic.
Part of the Artemis program is privatized because SpaceX is part of the Artemis program. You're just confusing the Artemis with the SLS.
So during the break, I looked that up, and there are a lot of complexities to this. So here's what I learned. Artemis refers to the overall program of landing on the moon. Artemis is everything from soup to nuts. And it comprises really of two different components, and that is the Orion spacecraft and the Space Launch System. So the Orion spacecraft is the Apollo-looking capsule in which the astronauts ride up into outer space. That sits atop the rocket. The rocket is the Space Launch System, which is actually a repurposed, most of it is repurposed shuttle rockets. The side boosters are from the space shuttle. And Artemis is a joint venture with the European Space Agency, the Japanese Space Agency, and a number of other space agencies. And Artemis does contract out with several other private space firms like Blue Origin, Dynetics, and SpaceX. The Space Launch System is manufactured by Northrop Grumman, Boeing, and United Launch Alliance, and Rocketdyne. And then Orion, the Orion space capsule, is built by Lockheed Martin, which is one of our big employers right here in town. 844-580-WDBO. Mike in Orlando is joining us here on the Joe Kelley Show. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Good evening, Joe. How are you doing?
Good.
Listen, I have to disagree with you on the private enterprise of shooting rockets up, only because in the 70s and the 80s, when all these companies shot rockets up there, they basically went out of business. Their satellites no longer have fuel in them, and there's just so many of them in outer space. And someone who has a family member who's in the aerospace division that worked with Lockheed Martin, the whole thing now is how do we retrieve them and get them out of space?
Look, I agree with you, Mike, on that element. I have for years been fretting about Elon Musk putting so many satellites into low Earth orbit. The largest producer, the biggest amount of satellites in low Earth orbit right now are SpaceX Starlink internet satellites. And Amazon wants to do it now as well with Blue Origin. They want to send up their own internet network in low Earth orbit. I mean, we are, Mike, you started off by saying that you disagree with me. You and I agree completely on this concern that we have littered, and I often refer to it as we're going to litter low Earth orbit with more Starlink internet satellites. And I mean that in the literal sense because, as we well know, when one satellite gets destroyed, if one satellite collides with another, it creates space debris, and that space debris becomes uncontrollable.
And Starlink is not only that, but they've also have brought some of them back to Earth because they do not last that long, too.
Right.
You'd be interested to find out how many they've brought back to Earth.
Yep.
And as for the ISS space station, has anybody ever got a report on all the experiments they're doing? It's not like they're coming back with, look, we cured this, we cured that. Basically, what I think most of the stuff outer space has done is to watch the Earth to see who's shooting rockets back and forth to America. And it's just basically something to watch the Earth, maybe North Korea or Russia that's going to shoot missiles off. So it's an early alert system. And basically going back to the moon is really a waste of money, and going to Mars is a waste of money because there's nothing out there other than putting a satellite receiver there to watch the Earth. And, you know, it's really interesting to get a report of the millions of dollars that we have spent and in the ISS space station for their experiments, what are they experimenting on?
Mike, I agree with you on that as well. The International Space Station is only 200 miles over our heads. 200 miles. The only scientific advantage to doing a science experiment on the International Space Station is zero gravity. And we can artificially create zero gravity without going into outer space. There is no space exploration that is taking place inside the International Space Station. I would love to go back to the 1960s mindset of let's take some chances and let's put someone in a rocket that is willing today to go to Mars. Let's see how far we can go. Let's send someone into deep space knowing that they're never going to come back. I mean, there are people who are willing to do that. And we just have to be willing as a nation to sacrifice someone. But if they're willing to do it, I think we have to go further, because you're right. It's a dead end in low Earth orbit on the International Space Station, and it is little more than a publicity stunt of having that space station up there, because we're not doing a whole lot in zero gravity in low Earth orbit.
And on another note of that, a lot of the astronauts have brain problems, because when they're in zero gravity, their brain is floating around in their head instead of being stationary because of the zero gravity. And there has been notified problems with astronauts coming back with brain problems.
Oh, they got all kinds of issues, Mike, when they come back. They're taller when they come back. They've got bone issues. They've got joint issues. That was when they sent those twins. They sent one of the twins up in outer space, Scott Kelly and Mark Kelly. They sent one of the twins up into outer space for a year just so that they could come down and compare him to his identical twin. And there are marked differences. And look, the radiation exposure alone, when you go out beyond low Earth orbit and you get out into deep space, the radiation exposure, for astronauts going to Mars and back, I mean, you could very well die from radiation exposure before you get there. So there are lots of concerns. It just depends on what kind of risk that we are willing to accept for those concerns. 844-580-WDBO. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. Look for the Joe Kelley Show podcast in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Odyssey app, the iHeart app, the TuneIn app, and of course, the WDBO app. We'll continue the Joe Kelley Show straight ahead here on WDBO.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Insightful.
You tell the truth from your point of view.
Entertaining.
Man, that guy is a lot taller than he sounds on the radio.
And engaging.
When we hear you on the radio, it's a good thing.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
Well, we certainly could not have a conversation about space without talking to a dude named Cosmo. Cosmo is joining us from Orlando. Hello, Cosmo. You're on WDBO. Thanks for calling.
Hey, Mr. Kelley, thanks for taking the call. Mr. Kelley, I just want to run something by you. There's a lot of, talk about should we not go into space, put a base up on the moon. Remember, what about the human spirit? Don't stop exploring. It's all within us, and maybe you can chime in. I mean, we wouldn't have found America if it was now Columbus.
Yes, Cosmo, that is exactly where my head's at. I think that we as humanity must continue to explore the heights and depths of the world around us, and that is the depths of the ocean and the heights of the galaxy. I mean, and beyond. I mean, we have to keep looking, and not necessarily am I thinking we should be out there looking for extraterrestrial life. We just need to be looking and pushing humanity further and further into the reaches beyond our wildest imaginations to see what's out there.
Yeah, real quick. I mean, look what the Olympics did for us. I mean, it was an ancient thing that we revived back in the 1800s. And at least it takes a little, stress off of everyday life. I think this is the next big step. Let's band together. Maybe this is the patriotic push for the world. I mean, we got Russians up on the space station. We don't have problems with that. They've helped us get up there with their space technologies. So, let's look forward to the future. Remember what Kennedy said. We don't do it because we do it because it's hard.
Yeah.
So let's make that next push.
I'm with you, Cosmo.
Maybe in 200 years, when we're looking down from heaven, we can say, hey, good job, guys. We got it up on the moon, and we got some people up on Mars.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks, Mr. Kelley.
Appreciate it. Have a great night. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your phone call. Really appreciate that as well. Don't forget your next chance to win $1,000 in the WDBO payroll payout is coming up tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. on Orlando's Morning News with Scott and Ez. How many times do we do that a day, Laurel? We do the payroll payout. Is it like twice a day? Are we doing it these days?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times a day.
Are you kidding me? We do it 5 times a day? That is crazy. That's a lot of money. $5,000 every day given away. Wow. All right. All you have to do is download
That's a lot of tacos.
That is a lot of tacos. All you have to do is download the free WDBO app. You'll find it in the App Store or Google Play, and make sure you familiarize yourself with the app. There's a button in there that says payroll payout, and when we give out the payroll payout word at the given time during the day, then you just open up the app and you put it in there where it says payroll payout. And then you just wait for your phone to ring. And if your phone rings, for the Pete's sake, answer your phone, all right? Because people are like, I didn't know if I should answer the phone. Of course you should answer the phone. If you entered in a contest, answer the phone. Your next chance to win, come on up tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. on Orlando's Morning News with Scott and Ez. I'm Joe Kelley. We'll see you back here on the radio tomorrow afternoon, 5 till 7 p.m. on WDBO.
We all have that friend who wakes up early to go get everyone McDonald's breakfast, while the rest of us sleep in. This is your sign to thank them. And if you're that friend, this is us saying thank you.
Just a friendly reminder that right now, get any size iced coffee before 11 a.m. for just 99 cents. And a satisfying sausage McMuffin with egg is just $2.79. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.